The race to the White House is indeed hotting up. We're watching key battlegrounds here. We're talking about Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Arizona, all up for Joe Biden in terms of his lead there. He's ahead in all these battlegrounds. I want to bring in Sophie Mokoena now to get a perspective. Sophie, I hope the line is better. Let's give it a bash. Let's go for it. In terms of, one thing, this is what I heard. One thing for sure, the last thing you want in a legitimacy, you want a legitimacy crisis in a democracy. That's the last thing you want, especially after an election, especially in the United States, one of the world leaders. Is it heading that way, do you think, Sophie?
Well, indeed. I think whoever is trailing has to accept that the will of the people is prevailing. And when you look at the arguments from the contender or the candidate who is trailing, in this case, you're talking about the incumbent President Donald Trump. He has already gone to court in different states and he has lost because there were no strong grounds to challenge the process in terms of recount and also a legitimate proof that there is rigging. And now again he's going to the Supreme Court to challenge the counting and the process in Pennsylvania. He wants to stop counting because when boxes were coming in immediately after voting, these were boxes that were going to go his way because it was votes. Those were the votes cast on the day of voting. And we know that in terms of strategy, these two parties applied two different strategies. The Democrats chose to mobilize their people to go out and vote prior to voting day and also to use mail voting or, send their ballots via mail. Right. And the Republicans chose a strategy to go in person, to go and cast their ballot. And therefore, it was bound to happen. When you looked at the reports earlier on that there was a record number of people who opted to vote early, and also in terms of the mail ballot.
Right.
It was clear that these were the Democrats or people who are sympathetic to the Democrats or who support Biden,
right,
who listened to Biden's call, and former President Barack Obama, who was assisting Biden in his campaign.
Right.
But Donald Trump and his team kept encouraging his supporters and voters and the Republicans to go on the day of voting. And therefore, counting started with their ballot boxes. That's why he was buoyant and celebrating. Yeah. Little did he know that when they start counting early ballots and mail ballots, it's not going to go his way. That is why he wants to stop counting now, because he's fully aware. It's actually an admission that what's coming is not going to come my way. Therefore, stop. Even if they were to stop, Biden is leading. Therefore, he's going to take it. Right. So I don't understand the rationale, but he is trying to make sure that there's a cloud hanging over these elections, but above all, over the head of the incoming president or the president-elect. That's all what he's doing. He is not a politician. He's a businessman. He was an apprentice guy. He plays to the galleries. He plays to the cameras. He don't understand the gravity of discrediting election, what it does to the country's image, but generally to the incoming leader.
To be fair to Donald Trump, he did encourage his voters, as you rightfully said, to come out on election day and vote, and they did. When you look at the election turnout so far, it is high compared to other elections. When you look at and zoom in on Pennsylvania, 20 electoral votes there to be had for Joe Biden, that could game over if Joe Biden gets that. That lead that Donald Trump initially had, that was over 600,000 votes. That number now in favor of Joe Biden is around 28,000. So are you saying all these votes that are coming in now at this stage are mail-in ballot votes, which traditionally tends to lean to Democrats?
Yes, when you look, for example, in Georgia, we know that when Philadelphia boxes were counted, Biden took a lead. Why? There you have strong history of activists of the Black Lives Matter, but also the previous history of Martin Luther King, the founders of Black Caucus, and people who fought for the liberation of the African Americans. We have very high profile figures coming from there. And there's a lady there who's formidable, who's working very hard as a Democrat, but also as an activist, who mobilized women and the youth to go out in numbers, taking his time to even register them, to ensure that they go and register. Mass mobilization. And therefore, Donald Trump is a middle class. He didn't understand. He cannot understand grassroots mass mobilization of politicians. But Joe Biden is familiar with that. He's a member of the Democrats. He was very close to the Black Caucus. He is a friend to the Black Caucus, guys. And he knows very well how things are done in terms of mass mobilization when you are a minority, to ensure that your voice is heard. And therefore, he knew the game. He knew what to do. But in terms of voter turnout also, you have a situation where you have people who are pushing back against racism. Racism because Donald Trump supported the right-wing forces and didn't want to condemn them publicly in the United States of America. Secondly, nepotism. I mean, he has got a cabinet. That cabinet, not the real administration, is his family. His son-in-law, his son, the daughter. I mean, it's nepotism in the face of the millions of the Americans. Even those who are Republicans wouldn't approve that kind of a situation. At multilateral level, United States of America has prided itself as the number one democracy in the world, but also the leader of the world. They've lost that stature internationally. Right. And Americans are so embarrassed. Therefore, it was a pushback in terms of regress. But on the other hand, you have the Americans, majority white and right-wing, who were saying, this is our country. We are going to push against these Africans, these blacks, these Latinos, and everything. And therefore, they also came out in numbers. And their rallying person was Donald Trump. So you have these two camps who came out in numbers to defend their own positions. Right. That is why the high voter turnout. In 2016, it was an easy ride for Donald Trump. It was anything but Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Anyone would have won. People were pushing back against nepotism to say you can't have Clinton and also Hillary Clinton immediately, and also her policies and all that. Therefore, it was a pushback. The same African Americans were saying another person who doesn't really take us serious. But Biden was brilliant in a sense that he brought Kamala Harris, and many women in the United States of America from the minority groups saw themselves in her, and therefore they knew that they were voting for Kamala Harris.
It's going to be a historic election for Kamala Harris. She'll become, if they win, she'll become the first female vice president, the first female person of color to become a vice president. Historic, momentous indeed. You spoke about the voting blocks with regard to the Latino vote, the black vote, the white vote, and each of these blocks are not monolithic as well. Our next guest, we're going to look at the gradual effect of this vote and look at it at a more gradual, granular level, so to speak. Just before I let you go, Sophie, people that are watching from outside might be just confused with regards to how how this election is called. You see different news agencies calling it different. Traditionally, the news networks call an election. Just explain very briefly how an election is called in the U.S.
Well, of course, behind the scenes, you have people who are tracking down the ballots. These are independent companies who are doing that, who have expertise. They interact with the respective candidates, the parties, and those who are handling the election process. And therefore, they are able to know that in this case, Johannesburg counting has been completed. And when you look at the voter turnout in Johannesburg, you have 80% Soweto. Clearly, 80% Soweto. What does it mean in terms of translating into votes? Being a predominantly, or I can say a majority black area and with a particular history. So they are able to do that, and media houses, we then speak to these companies. We also verify with people who are running elections. In South Africa, you have your IEC constantly posting information, and therefore you can get a sense where this thing is going. That is why media is able to call an election. But I think in this case, everybody is scared to call an election, because the problem is that in 2016, they got it wrong. And therefore, they want to be very careful. They don't want to discredit media, because if the media in the United States of America gets it wrong, by extension, us outside the United States of America, we are also looking at them. And as media, we trust each other. In fact, we expect quality and professionalism from each other. And therefore, you don't want your peers around the world to see you as people who are not professionalism, people who got it wrong. I mean, in 2016, I predicted that Donald Trump was going to win, because my assessment was that the majority white conservatives were very, very angry. On the other hand, the African American vote, they were very, very disappointed, because towards the end of his tenure, Barack Obama didn't have majority in the Senate, and therefore whatever he wanted to do couldn't go through, and therefore it was clear that it was going to be difficult to get a sober candidate, and in this case, Donald Trump was going to win it. And therefore, these are some of the things that you look at, but also you use history. Long ago, I said it that Joe Biden will win this thing. When he started announcing his campaign, when he moved towards appointing a woman, and a woman from the minority, you add some percentage there, you can see what the implication thereof. You look at the mood in the nation, or the mood around the world, the mood around the region. You can see that this candidate has done a lot of damage. And for me, it was national damage in terms of going with racists. 2, nepotism, the family running the administration. 3, it was losing international influence, where you fight with your allies in the NATO, in the G7. Yes. You go for countries traditionally America has never been friends with, like the DPRK. With us, it's a different story. Yeah. And China. With us, it's a different story as South, and also a country that was oppressed. But with America, there's a culture, there's a norm, there's a belief. And therefore, I could see that based on those issues, too, the man who doesn't have political experience, it was just by exigency that, or by accident that he became the president because of the mood of the nation. I mean, it was anything but. So in 2016, anything but won the elections, because it was anything but Hillary Clinton and the establishment.
Yeah. Sophie, always instructive. Thank you very much indeed for your perspective on matters. As I said, we have a number of correspondents around the world, as well as a number of correspondents in America itself, giving you various angles on the story. So, Sophie Mokoena, foreign editor, thank you very much indeed. We'll try to get back to Sophie if there's any further developments with regards to this race being called in America.